Good evening, good morning for some of you. My name is Jose Ramon Martinez, and on my behalf and on behalf of NAT's marketing team, welcome to the webinar, Meet the Internet of Simulations. Well, in this webinar, we are going to introduce you the new feature, the new package that is called Simware Web. Total time for the webinar will be about 45 minutes, and we will have time for questions at the end. If you have any question, please write the questions in the questions box of GoToWebinar. At the end, we will have time for answer these questions. So, what is included in this webinar? Well, the first thing we will make a small introduction about what is Singware. I understand that some of you don't know what is Singware about, so I will make a small introduction about the main characteristics of Singware. But don't expect this introduction to be in very close detail, because we don't have time and it's out of the scope of this webinar. So if you want to have more detail about what is really in Singware in terms of features and tools, then I suggest you visiting our website. Well, after that, we will talk about the new demands in modeling and simulation, specifically modeling and simulation as a service. Then we will introduce the new tool, Singware Web. After that, we will talk about Singware Learning. Singware Learning is a use case, a specific use case of Singware Web. At the end, I will show you some real uses of the technology: source code in different languages, clients, servers, everything running. Okay, so what is Singware platform? Well, no matter if you have a live, a virtual, a constructive simulation, you can build that with Singware. But not only build it with Singware, but also integrate already existing elements that maybe you already have with Singware, and also coordinate and lead them from Singware. So Singware is the same platform, a common platform for the entire supply chains, from developers to governments to enterprises. Well, in a brief summary, this is what you can do with Singware. You can create new simulators from scratch, from zero, starting from the data model. These simulators can be run over HLA, over DIS, and also over the communication layer that we use, that is DDS. Also, you can have already existing simulators, models, and you can integrate them in the same, let's call it federation or distributed simulation using Singware, in this case using adapters. Also, there is another possibility, that is building a direct integration with our core library, which is called NCWare Sim, with the already existing tools and maybe already existing simulation models. Well, in brief, Singware has three main characteristics. The first is a pure data-centric approach. Everything in Singware comes from the data model. For example, with the data model, we build the library, the core library, that is used for the entire simulation. For all the tools and all the features, use this same library that is generated using the data model. So the data model drives the entire simulation. The same library is used also for making the adapters. And in the case of Singware Web, which I am introducing today, the same data model is used for creating in this case, web access. So everything is around the data model. Of course, second thing, we are pure net-centric. We can use any kind of network, distributed network, local area network, wide area network, Wi-Fi, heterogeneous networking, homogeneous networking, and everything in Singware is, and this is very important for us, based on standards. We use things made in HLA, maybe in MHLA 1.3, or maybe in MHLA 15.16, or maybe in HLA Evolve, as they are now, without any modification. We use things in DIS. We use things in other standards, not so purely related with modeling and simulation. For example, in C2 system standards like CBML or MSDL, but also we have the experience with robotic standards like JAWS or like ROS. And in the case of SingWeb, we follow the same trend using another standard, in this case, that is LTI. The idea for us all the time is using these standards as they are now, without changing the applications, without changing anything that uses these standards. Well, Singware is a mature product. It's not a new product at all. We are in the sixth generation, in the sixth iteration. Now the new version we released 1 month ago is called Singware 2015 and has these packages. This is an overview. We have the Singware core, which is the main things to build and drive a simulation. Singware LBC for making adapters. Developer for creating simulation models. Singware RTI, which is our own version of HLA over DDS in this case. And Singware Recorder and Player, which is for recording and playing back the simulation, interaction review, and all this stuff. And also we have this package that I am presenting today, that is Singware Web. Well, we have a growing user base with a lot of users in many countries, 3 continents, a lot of people. For example, in China, we have some consumers. Well, what's new in Singware 2015? Well, I'm not entering into detail because we already had some webinar about that. So if you want to know the details of the tools and the features and what's new in the version, I suggest visiting the website. Okay, well, what are the new demands in modeling and simulation? Well, the demands these days is that users expect to have any device, for example, a cell phone, a tablet, and they want to connect to a place. And they don't care if this is a server, a farm of servers, a cloud, a private cloud, or whatever the name of it. So they connect somewhere and they choose a simulation and they want to use this simulation under demand immediately. And they want to integrate this simulation with other simulations that uses the same standard. So this is the demand. They want something immediate. They want something that is painless. And of course, the demand is using any possible platform, and of course, any possible client in any possible language. In a way, what users want these days is get rid of the details of simulation. They don't want to know what is the communication layer using, what is the language that the simulation is using. They want to care about the simulation itself. So Singware is going in that direction. In the latest release, Singware 2015, we have this simulation as a service approach using Singware Web. Also, we have a multi-language approach. We know that people no longer uses only C++. Indeed, they don't want to care about the language they are using. So we offer the possibility of using multiple languages for creating the clients. Well, we follow the trend of integration with even more open standards. In this case, adding CG and LTI. And also, we are adding more out-of-the-box integration with COTS. For example, we already had integration with BBS2, VR Forces, but now also with some gaming engines like Unity, for example. So let's introduce Singware Web. Well, Singware Web, why we made Singware Web? Well, we have been collaborating, participating in a lot of forums, especially with NATO, talking about migration of the simulation to the cloud, to make the concept of simulation as a service. For example, we have been members of the initiative called NATO DMBL since 2013. We have been talking and working with NATO ACT people almost from the beginning, for the first ideas they have about modeling and simulation as a service. And in the same direction, we are collaborating with MSG 136 group that wants to make an operational concept for modeling and simulation as a service. So we know what they demand. We know what they want to do. So our R&D people has made Singware with these inputs, with these ideas, with these demands of the industry and specifically of NATO. So what are the key features that we have in Singware Web? Well, the first thing we have is a multi-device, a multi-platform approach for running the clients. You can run our Singware Web in Android, you can run our Singware Web in tablets, you can run our Singware Web in a computer. Will be the same. Well, second thing, multi-language approach for clients. We have support here for C, C++, we have for Java, JavaScript, we have for PHP, we have for ASP.NET. So can be used for almost any device, any application. For example, from a web page. Well, the access is universal because we are using the internet in the Singware Web. So can be accessed for anywhere. And we are encapsulating the simulation as a black box, as something transparent for the user. The user asks for the simulation and the simulation is created in the server and is provided to the user in a transparent way. The client don't know what are the details, what is the communication layer using, where is the server. They don't care about that. They don't have to care about that, indeed. So we are encapsulating the simulation as a service. Well, for doing that, we use something that is called LTI, Learning Tool Interoperability. That is a standard. Again, we follow the Singware trend of using open standards. In this case, it's a standard of IMS Global Learning Consortium. And this standard was created by this consortium with the idea of running applications from inside rich learning environments, learning management systems. But it's not only applicable for these environments, but it's applicable for any application at all. So we are using this standard that typically is used accessing the web, but can be accessed using a normal client also. And this standard provides a RESTful framework. So it's very upper level, and it's very simple to use. So we use this standard. This is the base for Simware Web. Why we think LTI is the ideal solution for modeling and simulation as a service for this kind of requisites? Well, it's an open standard, first thing. Second thing, can be accessed, and this is something that is happening today. This is not a theory for any device, for an Android, for a PC, wearable, whatever. Has implementations in many languages. Later in the demo, I will show you some examples in some languages. But in fact, uh, if there is an implementation of LTI, and there are many of them, you can use this in different languages. And well, this thing is integrated because it's very upper level with the main technologies in the website, for example, with OAuth, authentication, JSON, etc. Well, typically, this LTI thing has two elements, which is the LTI provider and the LTI consumer. LTI consumers, many of them, LTI provider, that can be a cloud, a server, a farm of servers, etc. So this is the architecture of Singware Web. We have a client, which is an LTI consumer, and we have an LTI provider. Well, the client makes a request for a new simulation to something called SimFactory. And this SimFactory, which is placed in a URL, can be anywhere, is creating a new instance of the simulation and giving the access to the consumer to this simulation. So the consumer only has to make a request and has response from this simulation. So here we have three elements. We have the Singware simulation. In this case, the simulation is provided as is. The idea with Singware is that we want to, or we always make things in a Lego way. I mean, we have the simulation. The simulation is made with Singware. We don't have to modify anything in this simulation to use it in Singware Web, for example. If we add, for example, a recorder and player, okay, you don't have to modify anything, not even the installation, not even anything at all for using the recorder and player. So everything grows like a Lego, like pieces. So you can choose what you want to use. In this case, the Singware simulation can be any simulation made with Singware without any limitation. A new instance of this simulation is created under demand with this Singware Web. Well, second element is the adapter, is the bridge that is called Singware Server. Singware Server translates the LTI to the data model of Singware. Well, this server has to be created for each data model, not for each simulation, but for each data model. I mean, if you are using a fixed data model, which is sometimes the case, you only have to generate this server once. And we don't care if you use in your simulation the entire data model or only a small part of it. It's irrelevant for us. So, for example, if you are using the phone model 16.2, which is very popular, you only have to create the Singware server once, and it's valid for any simulation that is using this same phone. Later we will see how we generate this server. Well, with the Singware server, we control the instance of the simulation, and as I mentioned, needs to be generated. Third element is SimFactory. Well, SimFactory is not dependent on the data. and it controls the instances of simulation that are in the node, making load balancing, and also it communicates with other sim factories in other simulation nodes, in other computers, in other servers, to make a load balancing of the simulations. And also this factory is controlling the life cycle of the simulation. For example, if the simulation is not responding for whatever the reason, then this factory is able to shut it down. Or if the client is not making any new request in a certain time, then this factory can reduce or close the simulation that is being used. As I mentioned, this is independent of the data, so you don't need to generate that. So this is the server, and now we have the client. The client, the only thing we need to know about the client is that we are using LTI. And this means that no matter the language or the device where you're planning, you only need to find the right LTI library. For example, if you are making something for Android, and I will show you some example, then you need the Java implementation of LTI for Android. If you want to make something for C++, the C++ LTI client. The code is very simple. We will show some examples later. And the only thing that is specific is that the commands or the things that the client can request or send are, of course, related with the data model that is being simulated. So this is Singware Web. Very, very simple approach using Singware LTI. Well, now let's talk about Singware Learning. Well, what is Singware Learning? Well, Singware Learning is the first approach we make to the use of LTI. As I mentioned before, LTI is a standard that was created by people related with e-learning. So our first approach was creating this thing, this application, using an e-learning example. And this is a product that is Singware Learning. Well, the architecture, and we will see that in a moment, is the same. There are only two slight differences here. The first one is that the access is made by using something that is called Moodle. Moodle has LTI support. The use of Moodle is not mandatory because in e-learning they have other LTI clients that don't use Moodle. For example, Coursera is using LTI and is not using Moodle. Well, the other difference is that you are making an electronic course, you are learning something, and then you can launch a simulation from inside this lesson you are learning. And the difference is that here is not only running the simulation, but you have to make something in this simulation, and you will receive a great back. So, for example, you are learning how to fix an engine, and one of the lessons is, okay, go to the simulation, and in the simulation, please open this piece and do this thing and that thing, and you receive a great back to the e-learning tool, saying, okay, you made it all right or not. We will see an example later. Well, the architecture is very, very, very similar. We have a student that typically has a browser or something made with the score, for example. And what we have here is a Moodle that supports the LTI plugin. And in this Moodle, with the LTI support, we have built the Singware activity module, which in fact is the client. And the process is the same. This activity module, which is a LTI consumer, wants a new simulation, a new instance of the simulation, so it's created and can talk with that simulation later. The only difference here, apart of the small difference in the architecture, is that you make something in the simulation and you receive a great pack saying, okay, you made it all right, or you didn't make it all right. Okay, so now let's see some examples of use. Well, first we will see how to generate the server uh, in a very simple example. Then we will see a customer, a client implementation in C++. Then we will see the same other client implementation in C#, and then another in Android. These clients are examples that are included with the Simware package, with the Simware installation. Well, after that, I will show you an LTI client and server, an LTI provider and consumer, making the real thing, but in this case, using an example that is called SimSapes. SimSapes is an example that comes with Singware that is very useful for making demonstrations. And at the end, we will see Singware learning with a web browser and a learning management system course. Okay, so first thing, we will see the generation of the server. Okay. Well, this first version of Singware Web integrates with the rest of the installation of Singware, of course, like everything in Singware, but it's only available at the moment in Linux. Why in Linux? Because we just make it first in Linux, but soon we will have it in Windows. It's only a matter of finding the right dependencies, for example, the right OAuth libraries for Windows, which are available, of course. So first, let's see the server generator. Well, the server generator is just a tool we have. You can launch it like that, and needs a valid data model. A valid data model for Singware can be any data model. For example, can be a phone data model. Well, in this case, I have this data model that I'm going to use. And now I can generate and build it. And this is creating the source code of the server for you, and also generating the code, the code of the server. Well, this takes about 1 or 2 minutes to compile. So it's compiling. And meanwhile, I can show you, for example, the C++ client. Well, this is the aspect of a C++ client that comes with the product, as I mentioned before. The only thing that matters here is that we are using an LTI client. And the kind of code we have to use is very simple. It's like connecting to the URL we are using and putting the login and secret for the OAuth authentication. And then it's a matter of choosing the parameters. In this case, we are sending an object of a human. Well, this is an example based on RPR phone 16.2. They have humans there, so we will send that object. And in this case, we are going to send the position, altitude, longitude, latitude, pitch, roll, yaw, and even I enumerate here that is an entity damage state. And it's a matter of sending and connect. And this is it. Very, very simple. Well, meanwhile, I'll suppose that this has finished. Yeah, we already have the server. So this server has finished, and we can use it like that. We don't need to do anything else. And this server is valid for any simulation using this data model. Any possible simulation using this data model. Well, this is an example of C#. In this case, the same. The key element here is that we are using an LTI library. And the kind of code we have to put in the client is quite similar. In this case is the URL, well, the auth, and the parameters we want to use. It's the same example with the human, so we want to send the same data. And just sending it. So we make a request here. And this is for the auth authentication. In the case of Android, well, it's very similar also. This is Android Developer Studio. This is a real example. And, well, what we have here is that we are using, of course, the LTI of Java for Android. These LTIs clients are not ours, but are provided by the LTI consortium. But as you can see, they follow a very simple syntax, so it's not hard to make your own version. So, well, we have to do the same here. It's more difficult to read, but it's the same. You have the URL, in this case the URI, the key for auth, the secret for auth, and the parameters you want to use. As I mentioned, this is a real example and can be run in an Android device. Okay, so now let's see a real provider and consumer in action with a SimSapes example. Well, first, what is SimSapes about? Well, SimSapes is an example of a simulation that we include with Simware. It has all the possibilities of Simware inside, all the combinations, services that create services, models that have services with them, everything. And they have very simple simulation models to show all the possibilities. In this case, they have squares, triangles, and circles moving. Well, this is the example, can be run from, if you install Singware, you can run it, you can see the code, you can change it, you can compile it. And now we are making, we are converting this into a Singware instance, a Singware simulation instance. And we are making a client that is going to request this thing using LTI. Well, this client is very, very similar to the one I showed you in C++ and has a viewer that can be used for viewing the circles, squares, triangles, etc. moving. So, well, okay, here is it. Well, first I'm going to show you the example in the same machine. I mean, I'm going to start the server and the client in the same machine. Why? Because I want to show you that we are really connecting to something and really doing something. But later, we will do what is expected, is connecting to a server that is placed far from here, is in the other side of Madrid, indeed. And using the internet, we are going to connect to this server that will provide us with the same simulation. So first, I start the simulation instance. Well, in this case, I'm starting the simulation instance by hand. I mean, the idea of SingWeb is that there is a factory that is providing and controlling this instance, but in this case, I'm starting it by hand to show you the possibilities. So I start the simulation, and well, the simulation can be started in it. We have this client included, and for example, we can create circles here. So we create circles, we add it, and we can create another circle here, and well, with a different color, for example, and we add it. Okay, so we have two circles here. So this is the single simulation as is, without any modification. Is the one simulation that comes with the product as an example. Well, now we have the server. So here, what we have is we have generated the server. You have seen it. And now we are going to launch it. So for launching the server, we just call the application we generated the same application we generated, and we put some parameters, the port, the DDS or HLA or whatever we want to use, etc. So now we can launch the server. So voila, we have the server. Now this server is listening to the DDS and waiting for the LTI to send request. And here we have the client I mentioned. This client is made in C++ and is using, in this case, a local connection. In this case, is connecting to local host. Later we will connect to a remote host. So I start the server. We have this screen, and we can, for example, request here circles, and we receive the circles from the server. So this is calling the server, and the server is listening to the data coming from the simulation. So this is how it works. Well, we have here a frequency. This frequency is not the frequency of the simulation. This is the frequency of the request we are making. For example, I can change the frequency of the request to have one request each third of second, or making requests even faster. Okay, so let's close that. And now, and this is the good thing, we can connect to a remote server using the internet with the same client. So we close the server here, we stop it, it's stopping, exiting, okay. So it's ending, and now we just change the parameters here to say, okay, this same client is going to connect to this IP, which is in our main premises. So we are launching it. We choose the frequency to have, okay, 33 is okay. And now we are connecting. Now we are using the public internet for making the connection. I mean, now we are making the go-to webinar and using the public connection, the public internet connection. And still we can connect without any problem. This same client could be run in Android or in any other, for example, in Windows using C#, for example. So this is it. Okay. So now let's see Singware learning. Well, as I mentioned before, Singware learning is a particular use case of the use of Singware. The idea is that well, LTI technology at the beginning was thought for e-learning, so we made an e-learning implementation for that. So we start the server here. In this case, we have the server locally, could be remote, and we have the client. The client is a web page. Well, it's a web page because usually the e-learning things, well, it's not mandatory, but usually they have an aspect that is similar to that. So we have here the demo course. We have to log in with our user. We are the pupils here. So we are learning something, and during the process, we have to make a simulation. Well, we have here the instructions. And what we have to do here is, okay, this is going to launch to create a new instance of the same shapes we saw before. We use shapes all the time because it's very easy and useful. And now what is going to happen is that this shapes is going to be loaded with two circles already running. And the user has to create 5 squares in less than 30 seconds. And then the application will give me a grade back. So I launch this thing. This is creating a new instance of simulation, the same process. In this case, this is coming from the server. And now we can start. In this case, we start from the client. So we start, and this is starting. And here we can see that we have 2 circles already running. And now we have 30 seconds from the first to the last square for creating the squares. So we create 1 square, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it's finished. And we have a grade back. So our grade is, in this case, 72%. And this is it. It's the same idea, but used for e-learning. But as I mentioned, everything is the same. In this case, this is made using Moodle, and Moodle is using PHP implementation of Singare LTI. So now we can have some questions. So if you have any question, please put the questions in the question box. Well, first question is about why are we using LTI? Well, we are using LTI because it's very, very simple. First, it's a standard. It's something that is standardized, but others. And this is something that we make all the time in Simware. We trust in already proven solutions of other people. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. So if this standard is invented, why should we reinvent it? And LTI is very easy to implement, as you can see, and it's very upper level. This means that it's easy to implement in any language and in any device. And of course, comes with a lot of possibilities in different languages. LTI is already used in a lot of places. For example, in Coursera, you can use, and they are using LTI for having applications running in the electronic course, for example. Well, more questions. Now the question here is that package available? Yes, it is available with the latest release of Simware. And of course, if you want to make a trial, we can provide you with a free trial without any charge. Now it's only available in Linux. Soon it will be available also in Windows. Why only in Linux? Well, because we didn't have the time to make it in Windows. I mean, the Singware architecture is made in a way that the dependencies we use are uh, common standard solutions. I mean, for example, we use Boost all the time. We use ACE. We use sources. In this case, we use LTI and OAuth, which are very common. And this means that it's very, very easy to find these libraries for free because they are open source in Windows, Linux, or in other operating systems. So now it's in Linux, and soon it will be in Windows. Well, more questions here. Okay. Uh, any other question? Well, yeah. Yes, it's the examples. The examples are available with the installation. You have the entire source code of them in the installation. This is the real installation of the product. And here we have the examples folder with all the examples that we have. These are examples for 2 different data models. This is for a data model that uses a RPR phone 16.2, and this is for the data model of the SynSapes. So we have here different clients in different languages also for showing you how to do it. Also in the documentation we have it. Okay, so someone had a raised hand. Okay. Bruno is asking us how many objects can we manage? Um, well, objects in terms of what? Because, yeah, um, first we have the simulations. The simulations depend on the server, so it's a matter of balancing the servers that you have with the right factories. And on the other hand, the simulation themselves depend on the available memory of the machine and also on the available memory of, for example, if they are using DDS, on the available memory for DDS, which is only related with the operating system. I mean, in this case, it depends on the amount that the operating system allows you to create. They use the maximum amount that is allowed by each operating system. In terms of clients, it's a matter of request response. I mean, we have the factory for making the escalation. We have the factory for making the distribution of instances. So, okay. So there is no, well, everything has a limit, of course. But uh, at the end, it's like when you are addressing a server, like when you are addressing Amazon. Everything depends on the capability of the servers at the end. Of course, we can try to have something like a denial of service attack or something like that. But the idea is that the factory has to balance and avoid having these kind of problems. Well, they are asking me about the slides. Um, well, if you send me your email, I can send you the slides. But okay. So yeah, my colleague is saying that we will send the slides to everyone. Also, we are recording this session, so the record of this session will be also available soon. And yes, we will send the slides to you, I think that today or maybe tomorrow morning. Okay, any other question here? More questions? Mm, okay, okay. So if you don't have any more questions, then I want to say thank you to everyone. And uh, okay, another. Okay, yeah, yeah. They are telling me that the recording will be available in the Singware website. That, yeah, you have it on the screen. On our website, you can find all the recordings of the webinars, the presentations, and also information about Singware in general, the main core of Singware, the packages, etc. Well, thank you very much for your attendance, and I hope this thing will this Singware web will be uh, good for you, because I think it's very good tool, and can be perfect for maybe starting or maybe implementing the modeling and simulation as a service thing. Thank you very much.